Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes for everybody to join. Just watching the attendee counter ramp up there. It's good to see. For those of you just joining, we're just waiting for the attendees to join, and then we'll get going. I feel like we need some hold music. Okay, we'll just give it a couple more seconds, see if we can push that attendee number over the 50 mark. Feels like we're competing with the Chancellor today. Okay, I think it's stabilized now, so we'll probably get going. First of all, welcome everybody to this webinar. Thanks very much for joining us today. It seems like there's a lot of financial news going on this Wednesday. My name is Roland. I'm Yapily's Chief Product Officer. Just a bit about Yapily. We're an open banking infrastructure platform. We're on a mission to enable innovative companies to create better, fairer financial services for everyone. So today, as you can tell by the title, while our products cover both payments and data, in this webinar we'll be talking about smarter, faster, safer payments with open banking. So just to go quickly through order proceedings. So in this webinar we'll be highlighting some of the key findings of our brand spanking new report. This report's called the State of Payments of 2023. Just an FYI, the attendees on this webinar will receive a sneak peek before it's published as a reward for joining this webinar. Just a bit about the study. The report is based on a survey from 500 payment decision makers and I think over 2,000 consumers in the UK. So it's really great. I think you'll really enjoy reading it. Very insightful. Just a bit about the webinar itself. We'll be looking at what consumers value when making and receiving payments. For instance, how frequently cards are abandoned because of poor checkout experiences, and generally how open banking can help businesses improve that experience. But again, from both a customer perspective and also a merchant's perspective. After that, I'll be handing over to the one and only Serena at Yapily. Serena, I don't know if you want to just introduce yourself quickly.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Serena. I'm the lead product manager here at Yapily. I work very closely with the engineering and commercial team on the payment initiative front.
Thanks. And then Serena's going to do a demo for us. So while it's great to read reports and the theory behind it, it's always great to see things in action. So stick around for that. Just to mention, we want to make this as interactive as possible. So if you have a question, please drop it in the questions portion of the webinar, and at the end, when we have some time, we will try and get through those in the Q&A section. So without further ado, speaking of interactive, let's start with the poll. So hopefully the technology will work. There we go. So in our survey, we asked our payment decision makers to rate the user experience. from a consumer's perspective, what that experience is from making payments online. So I'd like to do the same. So I'd like to ask, as a consumer, how would you rate these experiences you provide a consumer to customers making payments online? So is it very good, somewhat good, neither good nor bad, somewhat bad, very bad? So please cast your votes now. We definitely need some countdown music for these polls for next time. I'll give it a couple of seconds. Still a few coming in. Poll will be closing. Okay, so it's a mixed bag. Some very good, kind of a normal distribution, somewhat good, some neither good nor bad, somewhat bad. Quite impressively, 0% give very bad, so kind of normally distributed around average. So this kind of chimed slightly with our survey results, which show that the majority of payment decision makers actually think that the experience is either somewhat good or very good. So I think that kind of accurately chimes in with what we saw in the survey. But consumers actually disagree. So like over 77% say, I think we've all experienced this, they have some frustrations with online payments. And if we look at the results, unsurprisingly, it's kind of the younger generation, one that for merchants at least is a very important market segment. And then kind of to drill down to some of the other results and age aside, 36% say refunds take too long. That's one of the gripes. 25% say manually entering card information is a real pain. I know that we have things like keychain these days, which kind of help that, but this is still certainly an issue from a consumer perspective. And then 20% say there's not good clarity around, for instance, things like subscriptions, when payments will actually leave their account. So these frustrations are generally impacting buying behavior, with the majority of consumers saying that this is actually causing them to abandon their carts because of this poor checkout experience. And I think the report shows this happens actually far more than we expect. So 38% of consumers actually saying they are abandoning cart due to this poor payment experience. And while we may think this is kind of a minor issue, we're not talking small change here. Like the median cart value in the UK is over £30, and if you amortize that over a year across various segments, we're talking about over £600 million lost in the last 12 months of checkout alone. And I think considering the kind of the times they're in, when consumers are very mindful of the spending and when businesses are really focused on improving that conversion rate through the funnel, this is clearly an issue that we need to solve. So maybe just summarizing the consumer's biggest pain points on this slide. They probably can be, let's say, categorized into three main areas: convenience, ease, speed, and security. Talking of convenience, how can open banking help to solve this? Well, open banking allows customers to make payments without actually entering or having to remember credit card details or fumbling around in wallets. So for mobile and, let's say, social shopping experiences, this is really crucial. Settlement and refunds. Actually, open banking uses the same instant payment rails, meaning that funds are settled within around almost real time, but within approximately 10 seconds. And that's super fast. So that's fast enough for even the most impatient of all of us. And on the issue of security, open banking is actually designed around the strong customer authentication that online banking is built. So particularly from a mobile perspective, this is super secure. You know, the last time you logged into your mobile account, generally two-factor authentication is used or some kind of biometric identification occurs. So from a consumer's perspective, this is super safe. So let's shift gears a little bit and do another poll. So from this perspective, last time we spoke about consumers. This time we're going to look from a merchant's perspective. So let's launch from a merchant's perspective. So similar to the first one, but this is again from a merchant's perspective. What is as a merchant, what is your biggest pain point as a business when it comes to payments in 2023? Considering what I just talked about, is it slow settlement, payment fragmentation, costs, ROI, or high fraud risk? Vote now. Again, just pretend that in the background there's some countdown music. Still getting a few votes in. Poll closing in 3, 2, 1. All closed. Okay, so definitely a big bias towards cost and ROI. And again, fairly, let's say flat between either slow settlement, payment fragmentation, and the high risk of fraud. So if we exclude the ROI, from the report's perspective, it's fairly close to what our report spoke about. So in the report, it's worth mentioning that there was only a 6% difference between the biggest pain point, which again was slow settlement, and the smallest pain point was conversion. And so I think the insights there is, on one hand, this suggests that the payment decision makers are facing a lot of challenges when it comes to making and receiving digital payments, but I guess it also underscores the fact that a lot of these are interrelated. So it's unsurprising though that speed, convenience, cost, and security are top priorities. So from an open banking perspective, I guess we have to ask ourselves the question: how can these be addressed? So let's look at how open banking addresses these pain points for payment decision makers. I think when looking at traditional payment methods, merchants especially, and I think that came out in our poll that we just did now, small to medium businesses are saddled with a laundry list of fees. You know, these could either be monthly transaction fees, account fees, interchange fees, extra charges for things like international payments, etc. But open banking, you know, these don't actually exist. So, you know, gateway processing scheme fees, meaning that all the savings are actually transferred directly to the merchants. From a fragmentation perspective, open banking provides a way for businesses to access multiple payment systems, and in effect offers an omni-channel processing through one single integration and API. And from a settlement perspective, unlike traditional payments where, for instance, merchants can wait for up to 3 days or more, open banking payments are settled straight away. So again, going back to the instant payment rails, this is immediate. And we won't even start mentioning the issues with fraud and chargebacks in other rails. So that's all well and good, but the proof is in the pudding. And so we thought a good example would be to cite some of Yapily's customers. The two here that we're looking at are volume and Yapily. And so after partnering rather with Yapily, the option by Pay by Bank for volume. They're a payment solution provider providing a mission to create a universal checkout experience, and they reduced their settlement time down to just 2.5 seconds. And this had quite a dramatic effect on their conversions. They saw conversions increase by almost 250%. And for Yotta, for those who don't know, Yotta is they're creating the first sustainable consumer payments infrastructure. They had quite similar results to volume. And after partnering with Yapily, they also saw online checkout conversions by over 200%. So, you know, these are significant, let's say, improvements in conversion for these two companies respectively, and obviously the implication on their bottom line is very positive. So kind of going back to the survey results, from our perspective, 1 in 4 UK payment decision makers say they are investing in open banking to stay competitive, and over half are more likely to use a product service if it's powered by open banking. Some of the key results for that survey: over 30% wanted their partners and suppliers to use open banking too. And so when we drill down to that and we asked why, the answer was they said they wanted flexibility, speed, and a great opportunity to innovate, and the fact that they trust open banking more in some instances than other banking measures. So those businesses that have already adopted open banking, I think, recognize its potential to significantly impact their profit margins and recurring revenue growth. It's just one small issue. And consumers don't necessarily understand the concept of open banking, not to mention all the acronyms of open banking. So what can we learn from that? I think consumer distrust and data sharing is probably the biggest challenge, followed by concerns about data privacy and the general lack of let's say, knowledge about open banking. And so for payment decision makers, they aren't oblivious to these concerns. So they also say that 30% saying that trust and data sharing is the biggest barrier from their perspective. And they face that as a company in driving the adoption, let's say, of open banking in their companies. But there's hope at the end of the tunnel. So we have some research from Entity Data showing that the majority of consumers change their minds about open banking when the benefits, as the ones that we mentioned in earlier with Volume and Yotta, the benefits were explained to them, and in the end, believing it could deliver valuable personalized experience. So I think what we're saying here is that the implication is that we can create demand by simply educating our customers, or your customers in this case, on the benefits that we've spoken about in terms of open banking. So Pay by Bank is one of the most secure payment methods, for instance, and the reason why: security was a top priority when PSD2 was drafted. And so banks and providers are required to use, as I mentioned earlier, highly secure authentication methods and encrypted APIs. And then to access the data and payments, service providers need consumers' consent. I think this is one of the most kind of, let's say, misunderstood concepts in open banking. Service providers need consumers' consent when obtaining these consents, and this is done through exactly the same methods, the strong customer authorization methods that we currently use in our online banking services. So again, super secure, very consent orientated, and already driven by some of the infrastructure that we have all been using already. So that was a lightning speed overview on payments. I think after all that theory, let's say now's the perfect time to hand over to Serena, who will show, let's say, all the theory in action for the demo. Over to you, Serena.
Thank you, Roland. So as some of you may know, Yapily is a technical solution provider in the open banking space, focusing mainly on API. And we recently launched our hosted page solution alongside our API offering to help speed up time to market for some of our clients who prefer lighter weight integrations. Now, with most things API, it can sometimes be really hard to visualize what the potential journey could look like and how it could work with your back office. And what I'm going to demonstrate or showcase to you today is how Energy.io, a made-up utility company, is using a combination of Yapily product through API and hosted page solution to achieve a better payment journey for both its customer and operation team. So I will demonstrate how Energy.io uses the pay by link solution to request for bill payment from its customer, John, in this case, and how they tailor the hosted landing page to collect open banking payment, and later offer John the option to set up a VRP, which is essentially is a direct debit equivalent in the open banking world for setting up a recurring payment. I will also showcase how Energy.io use our virtual account API and our notification webhook in the back office to get confirmation of fund to execute refund requests for open banking initiated payment. So let's start. Now, imagine I'm John. I receive a text from Energy.io to pay my bill. I click on the pay by link, which will then take me to Energy.io payment page, which contains my payment details and how much I owe and when the payment is due. So I click on pay by bank, which then kickstart my open banking journey. I select Monzo because that's who I bank with, and it takes me to the Monzo app. Now, on my Monzo app, I will review the payment details and who I'm paying. Now, remember on open banking, no payee details need to be entered by the customer. This removes any potential human errors and the risk of customer being tricked into sending money to a fraudster. And Yapily controls where the money goes to through the initial merchant instruction. So so as John, I will click confirm because I'm happy with what's been showcased to me. And what Yapily will do is it will redirect me back to the Energy.io website to confirm that payment is successful. Now, on the merchant website, which is Energy.io, I can see an option to set up a recurring payment. And because essentially, the option to set up auto payment, this is essentially non-sweeping VRP, and it's currently available only to NatWest customer. And because I'm also a NatWest customer, and I don't want to risk forgetting to pay my bill, which on time, because making ad hoc payment, I could forget paying my bills, and it could also damage my credit score. What I'll do is I shall go ahead with setting up a monthly recurring payment with NatWest. Now, I can see here that how much will be taken from my account every single month. I'm setting up a monthly recurring payment. I can also see what reference will be used each time. And I can also see when the first payment will take place. So what I'll do is I'll click setup because I'm happy with with the details that's been displayed to me. I'll select NatWest, and it takes me to the NatWest app where I need to confirm my recurring payment detail. Once the setup is successful, it will redirect me back to the merchant website, in this case, Energy.io. So this is it. It's very much straightforward. Now, what I'm going to showcase next is the merchant experience and how the merchant back office system could potentially interact with Yapily virtual account and refunds API. Now, if you remember, John or myself make a payment of £145.68 earlier. And since Energy.io also has a virtual account with us, with Yapily, and have subscribed to the paying status notification webhook, when it goes to the merchant back office, it can actually see the payment that's been made by John. And it has arrived on the account. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to navigate to the refund dashboard, and I can see there is a refund request pending. Now, as the Energy.io payment ops member, I'm going to authorize the refund request. And once I click authorize, in the background, if you can imagine, the system will ping a refund request over to Yapily, and Yapily will do all the validation check in the background. All this is happening in the background. It will make sure it's not a duplicated request. The total refund to date hasn't exceeded the original payment amount because the customer may request for multiple refund, and there is sufficient funds in Energy.io virtual account to process the refund request. Now, assuming all is well, and because Energy.io also subscribe to the refund status notification, it will know that the refund has been sent. So an SMS could be automatically sent to John, who requested for the refund, confirming that their refund request has been approved and sent. And all this happened using faster payment rails, so it's pretty much instant. Now, this is all for today's demo. I hope this gives you a good overview on how you can optimize your payment journey with an all-in-one Yapily payment solution. I'm going to hand it back over to Roland.
Thanks, Rana. That was awesome. So I think from that super fast demo, it should be obvious that what we're trying to design here is end-to-end payment experiences that reduce friction for our customers. So wherever we can shorten the flow, reduce the number of clicks, for instance, in some of our products. The objective is to kind of satisfy all those, let's say, friction points in the consumer experience that we were talking about earlier. So I think we actually have some time for some questions. So I'm just going to jump quickly to the question section, try and get through as many as possible. Cool. I got a few questions here. So starting off with, what are our new products? What are the new products that are coming out? So it's a great question. We have some quite exciting new products that have been launched recently or about to be launched, particularly variable recurring payments that Serena mentioned, and then also hosted pages and pay by link. Some of these are in private beta, so if we do have some merchants who want to get access to these, you have the right person on the webinar today. Serena, I don't know if you want to add anything more to that.
With regards to the, we have got a question actually that may relate it to that. So do you have a sandbox environment for your pay by link and hosted journey? So yes, we do. So if you're interested, do reach out to us after the webinar. And I'll also address the next question as well. Can I add my branding to the hosted page? And to what extent can I personalize the UI and experience for my customer? So yes, the landing page is merchant configurable, meaning you can tailor the brand and color accordingly, alongside customer support details or terms that you want to display to your customer. You can also specify your collections amounts, your payment reference, and custom in through the API, making the landing page more relevant to your customer. Client can also mask the pay by link URL and domain name to make it relevant to the customers. I think there's another question that came through, which is how does automatic refunds actually work? Is it only for open banking payment? Now, the short answer to this one is yes. You need to be using Yapily open banking payment service alongside our virtual account. With both these services, we will be able to carry out the validation against the refund request and process it for you. And operationally, this is much more efficient and eliminate any potential human errors.
I think we've got one here with, is the merchant dashboard part of your offering? I think it's good to just remind everyone that at our core, Yapily is an API and an infrastructure company. So I think, Serena, maybe you want to comment on kind of what we saw during the demo.
Yeah, short answer again, it's no, we're only showcasing how a merchant back office could potentially interact with our virtual account and refunds API.
Yeah, so it was a very pretty looking dashboard, let's say, but again, from the merchant's perspective, they would be their, let's say, interaction or UI driving our APIs. Lots of questions coming in.
Yeah, there's another question regarding how does the customer then deauthorize the VRP? Do they have to get in touch with the company? You can't unsubscribe or deauthorize it from your mobile bank app.
Yeah, so again, just to reiterate, everything is consent based. Do you provide white label solutions for ISO resellers? I wouldn't call it white label directly, but as Serena spoke about in the previous answer, we do allow customization on all their metrics, branding, DNS domain name, all those kind of things from a let's say customization perspective. I think it might be a stretch to call it a white label, but definitely customization. How to ensure that text message is not phishing when payment is requested? That's actually a really good question. So our pay by link is communication, let's say channel agnostic. And so from our perspective, we wouldn't be the actual sender of the request. it would be a link created by the merchant to request payment. That could be through some omni-channel experience. It could be an SMS, it could be WhatsApp for Business, etc. It's very multimodal. So it is definitely a very good question. There are solutions available, obviously, anti-phishing solutions for those customers. But again, this is outside the scope of, we will not generate those texts or message requests. We just provide the actual pay billing service.
Yeah, and just to add to that as well, Roland, because this is very much an education piece, right? So the solution that we provided, the merchant will be masking this URL to their branding, and as part of the education piece to the customer needs to know, like if Santander send you a link, for instance, and you land on a Santander site without an R, then you know that's not Santander. So I think there's a education piece that definitely needed to be made on the merchant and bank side with phishing.
Yeah. Next question. Considering the biggest concern was around security, what measures are in place to ensure that customers are operating on trusted apps and channels? I think at the foremost, the applications that consumers are using obviously should be downloaded from trusted app stores in the first place. From our perspective, as we spoke about earlier, the whole premise of open banking has federated access to people's bank accounts and payments or data is very much built on the strong customer authentication rails of online banking. So everything is encrypted, everything is end-to-end encrypted, let's say. So yeah, so from a infrastructure perspective, this is about as secure as it gets. I think maybe one for you. Are you live with merchants for NatWest non-sweeping BRPs? Also, when do you expect to have other banks to have enabled non-sweeping? Short answer from me is very much depends on the other banks adopting. I think some are taking, let's say, a wait and see approach. Certainly, we are super excited to onboard as soon as everybody's ready for non-sweeping. We are super excited to onboard those banks as soon as possible. What are the costs involved in opening a merchant account? Maybe one for Serena.
I think it really depends on your revenue projections and what have you. So I would recommend that you get in contact with one of our commercial team member. Yeah,
as we said, some of these products, especially the newer ones, are in private beta. So please contact us. We'll work with you to work on a use case, figure out what the best option is. How can open banking help low-cost payments, e.g. £2 or £3? I don't think there's any limit in terms of. There's definitely use case specific when, let's say, some of the additional friction does not justify the effort involved. Maybe that's not the best use case, but certainly there's certainly no barriers. So certainly can use them for £2 or £3. I guess that's what somebody's saying in that question.
Yeah, Roland, I think what they're referring to perhaps is the cost, whether open banking is cost efficient for like low value. And again, I think this is all part of like the commercial discussion that needed to be had with the with perhaps your account manager. And this is something that, we can take this offline and discuss it further and see how we can actually help you.
Yeah, maybe just one more kind of thought on that. It's not. There's definitely other solutions. If we're talking specifically about micropayments, there's obviously other solutions. It's not a one size fits all. I think it's very much about, as Serena says, fitting the technology to the use case. So I think that's where we see the best product market fit. I think that looks like the end of the queue. That was more questions than we were expecting. So thanks very much to everybody putting in those questions. If there are no more, I'm just going to wait a couple of seconds. if there are no more, I just want to thank everybody for attending this webinar. I hope it was informative. As I said, those attending will receive our report. It's actually pretty good, if I don't say so myself. And it's going to be a very insightful reading. So, for myself, thanks very much for attending, and see you on the next webinar. Cheers, everyone.